So here's the thing about William J. Butcher from The Boys. That name makes him sound so much more fancy than he actually is. Probably just, the British of it all.
Oi.
But anyway, Butcher is a fascinating character to have as a protagonist for this show, mostly because he's not really a good person. I do believe that he has a good heart, but if we measure people by the weight of their actions, he's had some major fuck-ups over the years. And even in the short time that we've known him, remember, we only get about, 8 episodes a season, so it's not like we've had an astonishing amount of content yet, but I could name quite a few moments of him being not the best guy. But we still root for him, and I think he is a very effective anti-hero in this rather cynical show, and I think that his type of character and archetype works well for the tone that this show is trying to establish overall. And despite all this, he's still extremely sympathetic, and everyone wants to see him win. Well, I mean, maybe not everyone after he started fighting Soldier Boy, because people got really attached to him, but most of the time, people really want to see him win. Even when he betrays our other protagonists over and over again, we still yearn to see his goal of killing Homelander achieved. So let's run through a few of the reasons why Butcher is so well liked despite his actions among the fan base, and is such an effective character for this show. Number 1, motivation, motivation, motivation. Although I think we try to judge people based solely on their actions, I do think we tend to take intentions into consideration, and Butcher's motivation for everything he does is quite the doozy. We learn pretty quickly the story of his wife and why he's so gung-ho about killing Supes and ridding the world of Vought and Compound V. And it is so miserable. I mean, the show does a really good job of depicting what Butcher's life was like before Homelander took Becca from him and ruined pretty much everything. The colors are brighter, he's smiling more, and clean-shaven. It just shows how in love he was with this woman that was taken from him, and his life before it was completely turned upside down. And afterwards, he becomes a much darker, brooding, unhappy man. He's much crueler to those around him, and he indulges in his sadness and more dangerous impulses more and more often. Having that clear distinction helps us better understand why he goes so far to avenge that time of his life, and bring the memory of Becca peace. In seasons 1 and 3, season 2 is a little bit more complicated because Becca's alive, but still the same concept. Bullying Hughie for being with Annie, taking Temp V himself, turning on Ryan for Becca, it all makes a little more sense when you look at where he came from, and the show does a really great job of reminding us about that. Becca is also a fantastic wife, and I think she and Karl Urban really had great chemistry on the show, and did a wonderful job while she was actually there in season 2, showing us why Butcher was so attached to this relationship, and giving us a really good sense of their very easygoing and natural connection with each other. It was a really great thing to see, and it definitely characterized Butcher's motivation in a different way than I saw just in season 1 from those few short flashbacks we got of her. Number 2. Homelander sucks horde. It's not really hard to pick sides between Butcher and Homelander, even when Butcher is kind of a bad person, because Homelander is so glaringly worse. I mean, nothing is below this dude, and he only ever gets worse over time. He is so unstable, so manipulative, and has such a huge ego, it is unbelievably obvious what a danger he is to the world as a whole. Forgetting Butcher's personal vendetta, he needs to be stopped just in general. And Butcher crusading with such a passion to do whatever it takes to kill him is a big reason why people like the character of Butcher so much. At the end of the day, they agree with him. Homelander has to be stopped. Do I even really need to give examples on why? I mean, allying with Nazis, killing innocents, rape. He checks all the I'm a huge piece of shit boxes. And I also think that's why people got so angry when he turned on Soldier Boy and ended up fighting with Homelander to save Ryan. They really want Homelander dealt with, and Butcher turning against that single-minded revenge is not only shocking, but disappointing for many fans. Not me, I personally liked it, but I'm a little scared to say how much I liked it because a lot of people do not agree with that opinion. But thank you so much for letting me know in the comments about this. It's definitely a totally valid sentiment for fans to have, and I think a lot of people really hating Homelander was a big reason for that. So thank you to all the people who on the Soldier Boy video pointed that out to me. I really appreciated all the help and discussion on that video, genuinely. Also, Anthony Starr does some of the most ridiculous acting for a villain that I've ever seen. Literally every time he's on screen, I'm uncomfortable and on the edge of my seat. He portrays the sociopathic tendencies that Homelander exhibits extremely well, and just makes you want to reach through the TV screen and slap the shit out of him. I mean, this convincing performance, and Karl Urban's, which I'll get into later, is one of the huge reasons why fans side with Butcher a lot of the time he intends to kill Homelander, even when he goes a bit overboard. Homelander is just so unbearable. Fun to watch, but unbearable. That you want to root for anyone who's doing whatever they can to take him down. Don't get me wrong, people get very fairly pissed at Butcher for when he goes overboard, but I still think the sentiment towards him is generally sympathetic because of just how bad Homelander is, and how badly he's treated everyone in Butcher's life. Number 3, his extremely troubled past. I really liked all the detail we got in seasons 2 and 3 regarding his home life. It definitely characterized him in a different way that I saw him before. That kind of evil in him that I thought was only revenge for Becca and his former amazing life, it was definitely bred by more than just that. When we meet his dying father near the end of season 2, we get so much context for why Butcher is like he is. Butcher has always been a tumultuous soul, let's say. Likely from his father's brutality, but he's always had people to tame him. Lenny, his brother, was the first, then Becca, and now Hughie, his canary, as MM likes to put it. He feels extreme protection for these people that are able to actually make him feel calm because it's such a rare emotion for him to feel. So when those people are threatened and taken hostage and taken away from him, yeah, he tends to go overboard because he doesn't have the person reminding him, and that person themselves is threatened. He was taught only the harshest treatment from his father, and like his father says, it made him hard. And Lenny never got hard like him. He needs people to hold him back, but when they're gone and threatened, he has no one to do that except for the person he's tearing through others for. And he's had a ton of loss too. I mean, we saw in season 3 how visceral his brother's suicide was for him. I don't think he necessarily actually saw it. We definitely saw how he always blamed himself for that loss, for leaving home too soon and leaving Lenny to deal with his father alone. It was the same when Becca was missing in season 1, and then he got her back only to lose her again. Like, his life is filled with such tragedy, it's hard to imagine him not turning out the way that he did. He always loses the people closest to him, the people he needs. And now he has Hughie, and, well, he's terrified that he'll be taken away from him too. So he punches him and locks him in a bathroom to prevent him from destroying his body the same way that he is. An incredibly Butcher way to protect somebody else. Forcibly rendering them unconscious, but still has no regard for himself. That's the big thing I think people need to remember about him. He doesn't really much care what happens to him. He has pretty much already cast his life away. I'm eager to see where he goes in season 4, but he is dying now, so I think he might be more Butcher than ever. He'd rather use his life to protect those around him personally, and that might mean some unforgivable actions coming up in the future. Who knows? He doesn't have much left to lose, except for those people that he needs to protect. But I do like how this characterizes Butcher as just kind of a wild soul. Someone who really has to be tamed by somebody else. And while I don't think that's emotionally responsible, and he should definitely just go to a therapist, I do like it more as a kind of dark, brooding anti-hero archetype, rather than just the my wife is dead, I need to avenge her. The detail really added to the complexity, but also helped us characterize Butcher as more of a person, and rather just a stereotype. 4. He's a badass. Frankly, he is just a fucking awesome character to watch. Such a simple reason, but Karl Urban does such a wonderful job delivering the hilarious and sometimes frankly disgusting one-liners that endear the audience to this character so well.
Daddy's home.
Evening,
Now, you could take the fucking red pill, right? Spend the rest of your life jacking off, crying into your chai tea green latte, what the fuck?
having a good growler, are we? He weren't nothing but a soup's bootleg, eh?
Yeah.
That, my son, is a lifetime achievement at the of the Year Awards, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
We better have us a little deco at this loony bin, eh, lads? I'll buy you a nice big family-sized bottle of top-shelf lube, and I'll tickle your balls till your big meters stop. And even then, I won't. I just won't do it.
He is always making an entrance with these ridiculous lines that somehow sound so cool thanks to Karl Urban and his sexy face. Yep, I'm sorry. Combine that with the almost eternally black ensemble with the I don't give a fuck Hawaiian tees, and you get a character that is clearly not listening to what you have to say because they're too busy getting shit done. And as annoying as he can be just taking action sometimes, it is nice to see a character so confident in who they are and what they want that they will grab literally any opportunity to get the upper hand. I mean, he hates Vought, but he made a deal with Stan Edgar. He didn't go through with it, but he did make that deal and strongly considered it. I don't think he's right to do these things, but it is fun and more interesting to watch than just a good guy, in my opinion. Also, just his balls, like, he took on Translucent in the first episode with, like, no weapons. He just straight up fought a supe and won with Hughie's help, granted, but still was just willing to like go through a fist fighting match with this supe who has like diamond skin. They can't even penetrate it with bullets. Girl, what are you gonna do? But he's still punching. And the last reason is that anti-heroes in general are more interesting. I mentioned this a little bit before, but to be completely honest with you, I am getting super bored of most superhero things. And I have for a while. Mostly because the main characters are almost always unambiguously good people who make these big, long, poetic speeches about justice and doing the right thing, which just never sounds human to me. Sure, they'll make mistakes sometimes to give the illusion of character development, even though most never end up learning anything specific and just become this perfect being that never makes any more mistakes, but Butcher, however, seems like a much more realistic character in this universe that we're thrown into. I mean, the supes get so dark and violent, it almost makes us nauseous, which makes what Butcher does seem much more palatable and relatable. I mean, some people just can't stay on that valiant path after they've been wronged over and over again, and I think that a lot of people understand that and Butcher's underhanded methods, which goes back to the Soldier Boy thing. A lot of people were just in favor of using Soldier Boy, even if he wasn't the best person and maybe a little bit of a loose cannon. It was still, to most people, worth it. And we want to see that type of character too in this extremely bloody, violent world. I mean, that's the type of protagonist that fits with the tone, because he is willing to give in to that violence as long as it's not against his own side. Not exactly, you know, the best for conflict resolution, but hey, maybe somebody who would try to avoid conflict at all costs but is all-powerful would be much more boring, rather than this man who is filled with rage, who is comparatively weaker than his enemies. Like, way weaker than his enemies, you guys. Forcing him to be very underhanded and creative, and, if I do say so myself, rather sneaky. And I think that these characters also just provide more variety, especially in a show about superheroes who are trying to learn what the right thing even is in a world where superheroes are kind of shit poo-poo garbage. Listen, I love Annie and Hughie, and I love that they are generally good people that always are trying to do the country justice and the right thing, but I find Butcher infinitely more interesting as a character because of how he chooses to deal with the issues faced. Annie's given him a run for his money in terms of badassery, I will say. I mean, she has been growing some huge cojones as of late, challenging some extremely powerful people that I do definitely think she would lose against, but I still respect the challenge. But I think also Butcher reigns supreme as one of the cooler anti-heroes on this show. He's been beaten down over and over and over again, and yes, each time he gets back up with a new, more underhanded way to get back at his enemies, he still does get back up, and the enemies are so bad, we almost want to see any method that works. Sure, go ahead, use this untested drug that is destroying your brain, and work with this unstable guy who is responsible for the deaths of many. I don't blame him either. Listen, I'm just framing it as it is, okay? And I still think that those moves are semi-understandable given the events, even though it's like, Butcher, please stop. You know, there's always a point in my videos where I kind of just go past the end of my script and start talking off the cuff, and I wonder if people can tell when I'm reading from a script and when I'm just speaking from my mind, because it is a lot more chaotic, less well thought out, and frankly, pretty stupid. But anyway, I hope you did enjoy this video. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments, and be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know what you think about Butcher. Do you think Butcher was right to turn against Soldier Boy, and do you think that Becca's memory would be avenged if he did go through with it and actually kill Homelander with him, if he let Ryan be permanently injured, possibly by the blast? Stay tuned for the next video. If you want to get it early, you can go to patreon.com/PosiTVty, and then you can also vote on what you want to see on the channel. Also request stuff in the comments, because we like to see that too. Supporting us on Patreon is a great way to grow this channel. It's also a great way to get more content for yourself and get to see what you want to see. Anyway, I will see you guys for the next one, and thank you all so much for the support lately. I really appreciate it. It means a lot, and I do hope you enjoy these videos while you eat dinner or something. They are about food length.